All right, y'all. To those who have faith, we have risen. Today is a brand new day, so we rise once again, right? Today, I do have a treat for y'all, so let's just enjoy this masterpiece. All right, now, um, let's check it out. What made me want to make this video? To be honest, I just see certain videos and it's like, sheesh. Nice. Yeah, it's like, sheesh, bro. I just see things that happen in life. I'm like, bro, dang, people are suffering. I am suffering. Why is it so?
Victor mentality, they'll be much better if they do that. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't think that
Let's restart that. I think before we continue, I'm gonna say that is the biggest lie Charlie Kirk has ever told, right? So yeah, the reason why I made this video is because when Charlie Kirk passed, I seen a lot of people talking about different sort of things, like they were they were trying to say like, oh, we should go to war. You see what the other side's saying about his passing. We should go to war. We're tired of what they've been doing to us. And it's like you're calling them, us, but it's like really he means black people. Like if I'm being 1000%, he means black people, right? I know he's including the ones that he considers traitors to their own race, but he's just talking about anybody who's not his skin color. But majority of those people in America um, are black people, right? And when I'm saying he, I'm referring to those people who were outspoken on social media saying that it's us against them. Not even just them. There were some lawmakers and figures saying that it's time to go to war, basically egging it on. But I mean, these people who egg it on, they agree with the agenda. And I feel like it's pretty interesting that not more people realize that this is the state of America, right? I'm gonna do more videos on the people who don't recognize the state of America, but but for now we just gonna talk about Charlie Kirk's propaganda for now.
we're going to be here for a couple hours. Get comfortable. Bring the best libs that Utah has to offer. However, I'm disgraced to think that the man could be shot in our country any more than I would care to be shot here.
DEI can fix it. We're not going to agree much. My final plea is this. I just hope Black America stops this victim mentality and embraces a victor mentality. They'll be much better if they do that. Thank you very much.
Well, I don't think that two bullets can make a saint out of a man.
And I'll say there was nothing wrong with what he just said there about Black America adopting a victor mentality. But the reason why they don't adopt a victor mentality is because they've been losers for so long. So, and I'm including myself in the losers, right? They've been losers for so long, so mm, when you're a loser for so long, it kind of affects your DNA, no cap. Yeah, it kind of affects everything that's ingrained in you. So, I mean, you can have a winner in your family, but your genetic structure has been changed, majority of your family members are just going to be losers. And I mean, that's just a science of reality.
A man who was a bad man before. I despise the Southern hypocrites who are now all lugubriously groaning and moaning what a great man he was. I think Kennedy was a terrible
This
president.
is just you being a white nationalist.
Right. Well, I mean, the simple answer to the white nationalist question is I'm not. You know, I'd tell them if I were, right? But I'm just
To begin
not.
with, I believe a slight rebuttal is in order for your opening statements or the opening statements that was made about the Klan. We are not anti-Catholic. We are not anti-Semitic. We believe in the white race. We believe that at this point in time that white Americans are being treated as second-class citizens, that the federal laws, the civil rights laws, have created a dual system of justice in this country.
They started to call me racist. And I'm not saying it's because of this, but black America was getting richer, they were getting stronger, and families were largely still put together before the Great Society, Voting Rights Act, and Civil Rights Act. 60 years later, black America is in a worse position.
Give us the ballot, and we will no longer have to worry the federal government about our basic rights.
I'm not saying it's because of the Civil Rights Act, I'm not saying it's because of the Voting Rights Act, but somewhere something went awry.
Give us the ballot, and we will no longer plead to the federal government for passage of an anti-lynching law.
Organization has done for the American society. We have showed them that there is all-out resistance to communism. The communists are revolutionists, and I think the black revolution is part of it.
We will, by the power of our vote, write the law on the statute books of the South and bring an end to the dastardly acts of the hooded perpetrators
It's
of violence.
mildly unpleasant to stop. And we have decided that if some groups will go to prison more often than others, then it's just not worth having real laws.
God has commanded us to separate ourselves from other races. In fact, that's not a unique stand. Billy Graham, just a few years ago himself, segregated his crusade audiences. He preached segregation. The Southern Baptist and the National Baptist, one was black, one was white. They practiced and preached
I'm not worried
segregation.
about people not being served at lunch counters anymore.
Yeah, and the Civil Rights Act, though, let's be clear, created a beast, and that beast has now turned into an anti-white.
But there are a number of Klan organizations, and I gather it is not yours, who march in tandem, arm in arm with members of the American Nazi Party.
People have to understand that this is actually encoded into our law. The Civil Rights Act originally was implemented with the idea that, of course, we wanted equal treatment for people of all races in the United States. But what quickly happened is that the courts developed this doctrine of disparate impact.
We feel that affirmative action is discriminating against white people, and there's no question about it. Two wrongs don't make a right. Because black people were hurt and discriminated against in the past does not justify the discrimination against white people now, and we're asking for an end to that.
Civil rights.
So another reason why I came to make this video, right, not just to speak to the people who rose again and whose soul were made anew, right? It was more to explain how history affects the present, right? People say history repeats itself. Well, they mean that literally, right? So I mean, this era was only 50, 60 years ago, right? Or I guess you could total it 80 years ago. But this was going on as long as 50, 60 years ago, 70, in that ballpark era. And it was like there were so many there were so many reasons why people nowadays believe that all this is behind us, when in all actuality this is just reality running itself again. So it's like when people said, oh, in the 2000s, we're already past the civil rights era was so long ago. Ku Klux Klan went into hiding. They didn't go into hiding, they just transformed. And that's what happens with anything, right? If people are still alive, right, they just transform into a new form, because I mean that's what you do in life. Like, you're not just gonna, like, a normal human isn't just gonna kill itself, right? Nowadays we have a lot of people suiciding, but that's because the humans nowadays we're in a different state of being. But if we're talking about, like, on an average human, they're just gonna transform to accept the reality. Right? So KKK members, the way they transformed to accept the reality, they leaned more on religion, right? But when they had the freedom to input their will and oppress the other races. They did it openly. So nowadays, if you look at 2025, you can see that people are blatantly racist out in public, on social media, but even GOP members, right? But that's because they're allowed to do it in the open again. After the civil rights era, that kind of thing was condemned because they're trying to wash away that history, right? But now that the history's been washed away for so long, the effect of doing it in the open now is not as uh, is not as visceral as it once was.
Act was a new founding where we decided to discard the U.S. Constitution and reconstitute the story, the mantra, the creed, and the vision of America. And you even see this in Republican circles as well, where they say, well, the Civil Rights Act corrected a lot of the errors of the Constitution. No, it didn't.
Till we came along, the right wing was strictly a talking.
So as you can see right there, Charlie Kirk was implying that them having slavery was not an accident, right? So the civil rights era only corrected it didn't correct anything. It just adjusted to the reality that the slaves wanted to be free and the white people couldn't hold them down anymore. That was the reality. He's saying that they could have, right? Um, they could have continued slavery, but the black people didn't allow it. So the Civil Rights Bill didn't really fix anything within the Constitution. Really, it just adjusted reality, basically. It just adjusted to reality.
Talking and literature passing society. Party, we're ready to get down in the gutters and fight to die for what we believe in, as I did in World War II in Korea.
Melissa Hortman, a member of the Minnesota House of Representatives, and her husband Mark were murdered on Saturday.
We simply are the fighting arm of the so-called conservatives.
There's no place for this kind of violence in our country.
We're not going to tolerate brutality, and we're not going to tolerate violence.
The Constitution says people have equal rights. Imagine just treating people equally. The Civil Rights Act does not treat people equally because the legal theory under the Civil Rights Act is disparate impact.
A bunch of white men went in and took some niggers out.
I'm saying he just said the Civil Rights Act did not treat people equally because it's helping people who are in need. So it's not helping the white people. But these people weren't considered people. They weren't considered people before. So if they weren't considered people, then the Civil Rights Act was to make them considered people. But basically saying it's like a paradox because it's like to make them equal, you have to disproportionately help them. But that would only make sense. That would only make sense if you were the people who weren't, who didn't need help. Because why would you argue that, oh, it's not helping us too when you have more than them and you were enslaving them in the first place? So it's just a roundabout way of like going back to like we didn't get help, but if you're the superior race, then you shouldn't have need help. So then there's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to complain about not getting as much help. I mean, if your race is superior, then you don't need extra help. But that's just how Charlie Kirk thought, you know. And so you see this video, I mean, it's comparing him to the history, but I mean, this is not a wrong comparison at all. I say this video is a perfect video. The only thing that's wrong with this video is that it wasn't made by a black person. Unfortunately, it wasn't made by a black person. And I think this is a really great video, right? And the reason why I say the only unfortunate part is that it wasn't made by a black person is just because if a black person made this, then it would be like retribution. Um, but the white person, they're condemning their own kind, which I respect, but at the same time, they do benefit from the same structure. So, so really them tearing down their own race is not gonna hurt their race at all. Because the structure is built to uplift that same race. So even though he's uplifting himself off of the downfall of his fellow man, that all it does is raise the same race back up. Yeah. Because the structure is built around it. But I do appreciate this video. Great content.
Out of school and whooped them up, but no such happened.
And demonstrations and violence have never solved any problem yet and won't solve this one.
You believe the Soviet Union, sir? In fact, there were extermination camps.
The Soviet Union? Let's stop now, right there. How about that Soviet Union? They sat on the International Court of Justice at Nuremberg. Do you believe in the Soviet justice?
Do you disbelieve in the evidence accumulated by your own government of the United States and by the government of Britain as well as the Soviet Union?
There are places and there are procedures that can be followed and should be followed.
Why did you say that the civil rights bill should be overturned?
I didn't say that. I said it was a mistake.
Why? That's crazy. I want to be here. That's trouble.
Counseling, we're not counting gang violence.
I remember that video when he said that's trouble, I wouldn't be here. And Charlie Kirk said, that's right. He said, that's right. I know. Bro, Charlie Kirk, see, everybody's like, oh man, he was so cordial. He did politics the right way. He did debate the right way. But it's just like, bro, thing about it is he just put out so much content. So the ones where he seemed cordial in it looked like the majority, but when he couldn't take it anymore, he would let out his rage. He would let out his rage. But you gotta understand, everybody's different. So him letting out his rage is him like sneak dissing. He's gonna throw in that little jab here and there, right? And he's like, they won't get it because they think I only say nice things. I only keep it calm, but really, I just don't like to talk too much about it. So it's like you really just you gotta look at his content in totality. You can't just look at the little bit that he did here and there. You gotta look at the entire thing, right? And that's why I like this video because it it shows it shows his content from his entire life.
Charlie Kirk was a guy on the internet, and his assassination on September 10th, 2025 by alleged meme lord Tyler Robinson resulted in a month of firings, threats, memes, and arrests, all attempting in some way to capitalize on the outspoken capitalist's death. Takes around the moment include the usual spats over who's actually at fault for the shooter's actions and the conditions in America that led to the shooting. All stuff we've heard a million times before. But now with the added threat of a desperate and ailing President Donald Trump threatening sweeping censorship against Kirk's detractors and limp threats of reprisal from Kirk's peers and supporters. Writers Ta-Nehisi Coates and Ezra Klein had a conversation recently which plays out as a perfect microcosmic glimpse into something I've been thinking about both following and long before the Kirk assassination. In short, Klein beatified Kirk in death, and Coates, in my opinion rightfully, took umbrage with Klein's interpretation of this moment in history, writing a rebuttal piece that led eventually to this conversation.
I can, for this moment, find some way to grieve with you, to see your friend the way, or in some version of the way you saw him, right? That's not my view of, the person's whole legacy, but going to people when they're grieving like that and saying, listen, I want to tell you really what I thought of your friend. Just feels like not what you do in a kind of a community.
So I guess
that's part of my reaction too.
I think all of that is understandable, but I guess, was silence not an option?
During the conversation.
So that Ta-Nehisi Coates interview with Ezra Klein, I watched that, and I would say I'm glad Ta-Nehisi Coates. I'm glad that he talked with Ezra Klein to explain to him, you're kind of pushing the white supremacist propaganda, big bro. But Ezra Klein. But Ezra Klein was just like, well, it's like I don't really know my role in this whole big thing, right? Like, I just think I'm just trying to advance us to any sort of win, right? Even if it means accepting white supremacy on my side, you know? And that's that's where the argument comes from. It's like there's so many white people who want to say, guys, we stand with black people, we stand with gay people, we stand with marginalized communities, and it's like you're only saying that to get a win for a party. You're saying that to get a win for Democrats because you feel like you belong to the Democrats, right? But you would do whatever it takes to get the Democrats a win, even if it meant throwing aside your morality, which is why you joined the Democrats in the first place because you wanted to keep your morals, right? So, and that's why I feel like even Ta-Nehisi Coates himself, like he's grappling with how to talk to Ezra Klein about this, but it's like, bro, really, you should just be leaving this guy alone completely because you understand you understand what's going through his mind, right? You can try to convince him. You can try to convince him, but he's never gonna understand the black reality. That's why he wrote that piece on abundance, because he would never understand that these black people cannot take abundance. We cannot indulge in abundance because every time we get demeaned and destroyed by the system, we can't. We can't be a part of abundance. So your friend here, he's only talking to a select few people who can really enjoy abundance, which is white people. So it's reasonable to it's reasonable for him to say that, but for him to say that he stands with us as a people is incorrect, right? And that's what a lot of people are getting mad about, and they're like, "Oh man, how could he make this piece? I can't believe Ezra Klein is like this." No, it's really just that you don't accept reality, right? Dr. Umar said it best. I mean, white people will never throw away their incentive to be a part of the power structure. So you know what I'm saying? You can have white friends, you can do all that, but you have to understand these white people, they will never throw away their privilege for you if you ever plan on doing something for the black community. So I mean, you can have him as a friend, Ta-Nehisi Coates, but to expect him to do something that's gonna benefit the black community as a whole, it's improbable. But I am gonna speed this video up to 2 times speed. I'm sorry, y'all. Like, I'll put on the caption. But see, a guy like me, I just speed through these videos, I'm not gonna lie.
Conversation, Klein has danced around possibly the most stunning revelation of his life, that he has nothing valuable to say about this important political moment. His desire to engage in conversation about Kirk is ultimately based around his feelings, mostly fear, and kinship with a man whose politics are indistinguishable from those of a Klansman. Coates, who is a black American, seems in counterpoint because exasperated by not just the conversation, but the road leading to it as well. I call this phenomena liberal chelation theory, which basically states that a political speaker who makes money off a political cause, but is not also a stakeholder in that cause, will always be tempted to maintain the status quo in order to continue making a living off talking about a situation instead of changing it. Following, they will prevaricate and distract and hand-wring about direct action, doing everything to diminish the concepts to vagaries and hypotheticals, while paying constant lip service to its value, maintaining a political fugue state within their followers and adherents, where action is seen as both necessary and impossible, due to an ever-expanding list of obstacles. The state is similar to heavy metal poisoning in the human body, for which the treatment is, when appropriate, a process called therapeutic chelation, introduction of a substance which forms a chemical bond around the poisoning metal and separates it from the body for evacuation. Kirk's death, regardless of your feelings about the morality or legality of the situation, was a highly effective act of political violence against a core pillar of the American evangelical conservative movement. Kirk was a longtime personal friend to the Trump family, and without a doubt the most influential conservative voice to people under the age of around 50 in a powerful but aging political movement. There are plenty of voices, particularly in the online sphere Kirk dominated, who enjoy a great deal of influence and success and crossover with Kirk's audience. Audience, however, only goes so far when it comes to mainstreaming the 60-year-old political project which was Kirk's bread and butter to people under the age of 40, while still appealing to the affluent and ancient conservative donor base that selects conservative politicians. The few of Kirk's contemporaries who weren't too black, too Jewish, too female, or even too Catholic to be led in the front door are disgusting freaks like Asmongold or the Quartering, degenerates like Milo Yiannopoulos or Nick Fuentes, or insufferable closet cases like or even too Catholic to be led in the front door, are discussing freaks like conservative politicians. 60-year-old political project which was Kirk's bread and butter to people under the age of 40, while still appealing to the affluent and ancient conservative donor base that selects conservative politicians. The few of Kirk's contemporaries who weren't too.
So as you see right here, he basically says the abundance movement that Ezra Klein was thinking of projecting forward, right, was actually done in was actually done in Great Respects by Charlie Kirk. He would take the people who are basically not accepting of their race or their ethnicity or wherever they came from, the people who wanted to be more so like the white people, which there's always going to be people in the group who want to do that, but when they get used in a certain way by the white people, it's just that they don't realize that, right? There's always going to be people in your race who don't want to fully be a part of the race, which is completely okay if all races were doing the same thing, but all races don't do the same thing, right? So when you're a black person, you do have to condemn those people who go against the race, because when the race that they're joining is going to destroy black people, right? So in this instance, right, when Kirk brings together the people who are not feeling fully black, not feeling fully Hispanic, not feeling fully gay, right? He brings those people to join the white power structure. He uses them against their cause, and then he says, "See, look, you're one of the smart people, right? If you wanna adopt a victory mentality, join the white people because the white people are victors, right?" That's what he's basically saying when he tells you that you don't have a victory mentality because you're not going for wins at all costs. But not all wins are wins you want to take, because not all wins lead you to the same goal, right? For white people, since they've been the majority, any win they get is getting them closer to their goals. So as a white person, it would make sense to take all the wins you could get. That's why I say it's not a bad strategy, but the strategy doesn't work for every race, right? And so, I mean, like I said, Ezra Klein, he comes up with this piece like he's a novel, like he just came up with this and he's the first person to ever think of it. But no, it's just that there's been successful people who have done it way better than you, and also a terrible example of why it shouldn't be done in the first place. But there's no point in even arguing that point with him, because to him, he wants to be just like Charlie Kirk. He wants to be just like the Klansmen. So
Black, too Jewish, too female, or even too Catholic to be let in the front door are disgusting freaks like Asmongold or the Quarter, degenerates like Milo Yiannopoulos or Nick Fuentes, or insufferable closet cases like Steven Crowder. Charlie Kirk was a charismatic wasp with a boring day life who towed the line, stayed on message, and knew through the grid coordinate where his bread was buttered. Outside some egregious and unlikely error on his part, Kirk would have preached hate for decades to come to an ever-growing audience of America First fascists. But now he's dead, and the time, money, attention, and consideration the conservative movement invested in him to bridge their message to tomorrow is wasted.
Just for the court's information, we did file just recently within the last few minutes a notice.
And I actually agree with that statement completely too, that now that he's passed, there is no person to toe the line the same way Charlie Kirk did. Other people who try always fail, and that's just because they're just looking at, I mean, they try, but they're not looking at it the same way he was. Charlie Kirk, I will admit, he was very, very influential, and he was pretty good at what he did, except for the few slip-ups, like this guy just said. But those few slip-ups, they just show his true character. If anything, it's not a slip-up because he really made a mistake. It's a slip-up because he showed the side that he wasn't supposed to. Hey, which I understand completely. The races are playing the world domination game. So, he was advancing a victory until he got knocked off, unfortunately. And it's always unfortunate when somebody loses their life. Unfortunate for his children, unfortunate for his family. Not unfortunate for me, but unfortunate for some of those people around him.
Intent to seek the death penalty that was filed by Utah County Attorney Jeff Gray. So that should be in the court's file.
The sheer intensity of the reaction to Kirk's death shows just how valuable he was as a figurehead to the conservatives. Kirk, through his programming, created a new conservative ideal of leftists as effete, easily angered college students who didn't actually know what they believed and were too timid to act on their impotent aggression otherwise. Essentially, a blueprint for bullying that formed the body of conservative messaging for the last decade. The only thing that could break this delusion would be for a leftist to harm Kirk, and for them to do so in a way that humiliated him on the world stage. Worse still, for that violence to be disregarded, accepted, or even celebrated and mocked by a sizable portion of Americans.
We've watched legions of far-left radicals resort to desperate acts of violence and terror because they know that their ideas and arguments are persuading no one. They know that they're failing. They have the devil's ideology, and they're failing, and they know it. They feel it, and they become violent, especially in the wake of Charlie's.
I think it's very interesting that people claim Tyler Robinson was a leftist when his entire life he voted right. His whole family was right. And yes, he was dating a transgender person, so I can understand the sentiment saying, well, he was probably radicalized for a couple years and disgruntled. But I think really what it shows, right, since he was voting Republican every single chance he could, right? And he never dissuade from that, right? I think what it shows is that he grew up as a Charlie Kirk supporter, right? Which I think most people on the right did. When I was a child, I thought I was a Republican too. And that's because I thought, oh man, they're Christians, they believe in family morals. They make a lot of sense. And in some respects, I could say that it sounds like a good idea, right? No, yeah, so both sides I'll say are fairy tale dreams. They both sound like good ideas, but once a fairy tale's over and you see what it really is, it becomes a little more embarrassing. Because the right, they talk about family values and Christian values, but they believe in white nationalists. And I mean, if you read the Bible, there really wasn't any white people back then. They weren't talking about white people at all. Like, so it's like you're following people who were not white, but you believe in white Christian values, but the people who you follow in the Bible were majority not white at all. And it's like then you demean the other races when those are the people who you follow in the Bible. Jesus was not white. So, I mean, hey, you know, there's no need to argue about that though. That's what I say. It's like then you put your race as if like, oh, he was like us, you know, we're just trying to be Christ-like. But it's like majority people in this white nationalist movement are not Christ-like at all. They do terrible things to their family, and I mean, and they don't follow the Bible. And that's another thing I hate. Like people try to lump in the Christian movement with this white nationalist movement, and it's like, no, I mean the world has just been corrupted the same way it was corrupted in the Bible, corrupted by flesh once again. Majority of these people in religion in general are not moving in the name of God. And many things they do are things that are being corrupted by the earth following their race. And that's why honestly, that's why I had to recognize my race because I realized that the world's playing a world domination game, and if you're too slow, then you're just gonna get caught up in it, right? So I do support black people, but that's simply because the rest of the world is playing world domination. So I need to protect my race. Since the world wants to play world domination, I obviously have to protect the black people because we just can't protect ourselves. The other races, they're more focused on advancing their race, but the black people are more focused on finding their place in heaven or finding peace with themselves, which is a great idea. But The rest of the world is not playing the same game. And that's why we get hurt every time. And that's why I say you gotta call out the people who stray away from their race, because the rest of the world is not doing the same thing. The rest of the people, the rest of the people in the world take advantage of those things. And it's like, oh, we can be the better people, but we don't know when the world's gonna end. We don't know when Jesus is gonna come save us once again. So when Armageddon comes, wouldn't you rather be on top than be on the bottom? I'd rather just pray for forgiveness and say, God, I wanted to be as Christ-like as possible, but the world wanted to play domination, so I dominated.
Assassination, our country must have absolutely no tolerance for this radical left violence, extremism, and terror. We're done with the angry mobs, and we're not going to let our cities be unsafe.
Thus, following Kirk's literally comedically timed assassination on September 10th, the conservative movement in general has reacted like a wounded animal. They are hunting people online to have them fired, threatening mass violence, making songs about lynching people, etc. The Trump administration is even pressuring broadcasters to crack down on non-sympathetic messaging via the Federal Communications Commission, resulting in longtime late-night talk show host Jimmy Kimmel being
And that's something right there. They post an AI video or AI singing video of a guy getting ready to hang some black people. And I think it's really interesting. We have a black conservative movement, and in the same movement, you have people joking about hanging us. And the black Democrat movement, there's nobody joking about hanging white people. They may laugh at Charlie Kirk's death and say he got what he deserved, but they would never joke about torturing him in broad daylight. But they know, because they have a history of doing it to us, they can just say, hey, look, man, it's just history, bro. It's nothing crazy, it's just history. And so that's why I feel like it's like the black people, we always try to shed our skin and put on our righteous robes, but it's like nobody's doing that for us, man. The other races are not doing that. So I say, hey, y'all just gotta recognize where the world's at. We just gotta recognize where the world's at. Because if we don't, we are going to get hurt every time.
temporarily taken off the air by Sinclair Media. In the midst of this, a swath of creators who've made money peddling leftist messages online have come forward to condemn not just the violence against Kirk, but the positive reaction to that violence from their contemporaries. These people follow the general pattern of being well established on their respective platforms, white, economically comfortable, and seeming generally to come from a soft, sheltered background.
Imagine being a 12-year-old.
Violence against Charlie Kirk awoke in them a shocking and sudden sense of class solidarity, not with workers, or disadvantaged peoples, or even gun violence victims, but rather the elevated political commentary class. And so, seeing one of their own harm, they reacted extremely to the news in attempts to quell any future violence and mitigate the risks to themselves, generalizing violence as an all-over ill instead of weighing the situation from a materialist perspective. In doing so, these creators have separated themselves permanently into their newly found class, undergoing, as suggested before, the process of liberal chelation.
Don't make that line be one between the left and the right. Because if you do make that line fall between the left and right, I will side with the right. This is not about party lines. So don't...
Dean Weathers is the most egregious example of this in action, going so far as to say he abandoned his...
See, this is why I don't claim any affiliation, because all of them disgust me. Absolutely. All of them disgust me. All of them make me want to throw up. All of the above.
Position entirely over celebration of violence against Kirk, largely because he identified with Kirk as a contemporary in fear. Class solidarity. Literally. But I'd also like to focus on the statements of a creator I'm more familiar with, Australian political commentator Jordan Shanks, known as Friendly Geordies on YouTube.
What other developed nation insists on degrading their democracy to that of a third world banana republic where assassinations are seen as just another campaign tool? As an outsider, I can assure you that the rest of the civilized world has always looked on in morbid curiosity at the United States, who seem to not only tolerate but expect a certain level of political violence in its democratic process, as if this was almost an experimental element of free speech. But the fact that the commentary, almost as quickly as the bullet had exited Charlie's neck, immediately shifted to questioning whether or not Charlie Kirk deserved to die, or further, if violence is now justified, I think, anyway, if you will pardon the phrase, is a turning point.
In his follow-up video to the Kirk assassination titled Turning Point, he decries political violence and pro-violence standpoints in America as some sort of novel incidence of, especially Generation Z's, chronic internet habits.
This is something that I feel like only comes from privileged people who have not experienced violence throughout their years in any country that they've been to. Because in the US, we have a culture of political violence. We have a culture of it. JFK was assassinated. Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. We have many presidents who have been assassinated. We have many people who have been killed just because of their race, political things. And when this is why I hate it when people started coming up with the words hate crime, because hate crime just stems from politics. You're white and I'm black. That's They say politics isn't based off identity, but it'll tell you in 2025, it'll show you that politics have always been based off identity. If you get killed, it's because of your identity. Abraham Lincoln was killed because he freed slaves. Even though Abraham Lincoln wasn't even a great person, he was killed because that was his identity. Even though Abraham Lincoln in himself, he didn't care that much about slaves, but when somebody looks at him, they say, "Oh, this is your identity, so I want to get rid of you." Politics have always played a huge part in America. That's the whole reason why George Floyd, that's why George Floyd got killed by having that knee on his neck, because he was a big black man off of a lot of drugs, right? Unfortunately, right, I will say he was on a lot of drugs. Those drugs were not the cause of his death. He asphyxiated because he was scared he was gonna die. That's what happens when you're on drugs. You get scared. And then people say, "Oh, he shouldn't have been on drugs. That's a crime." No human has the right to decide another human's death, especially not on the state that he was in. Right? In a society, if you if we claim if we claim to be a part of this society, then we're supposed to allow the government to handle these procedures, right? They can say, "Oh man, he's on drugs. He should go to jail for 10 years, 5 years because he was on these drugs and he wasn't supposed to be. Oh, he's a repeat offender. Oh, he needs to go to rehabilitation." But we have enforcers who want to say whether or not he should be alive, and then people try to defend it. No, no, that's not right. That's not right at all. That's not right at all. But we do that here in America. We do that here, right? That's why we have right to bear arms. Why we have right to bear arms if we don't believe in political violence? Right to bear arms is to stop us from being oppressed. So that means we're allowed to go to war if there's a issue large enough that we the people want to deal with the government. So that's why I say people don't really understand the history of America when they say, "Oh man, we should we we should we should be against these things." But really it's just because they realize, "Oh man, this person could get killed over their politics just like me. I thought I was in a different class than them." But really, no, it could happen to me too. That's why when Charlie Kirk passed, I felt absolutely nothing. I said it's really unfortunate for his family. I do feel bad for his children because I mean, like, you grow up without a dad. Like, my dad wasn't around. Now those kids are gonna be just like me. That's sad for them. But I'm not sad for Charlie Kirk.
Schadenfreude by saying that this is the society that Charlie Kirk wanted. So did you. Only 67% of millennials and just 44% of Gen Z, that is less than half of Gen Z, think that violence is never acceptable against an elected official. What's the common denominator within these two demographics? They're the ones that are the most online.
And the ones that are the youngest, the ones that don't know their history the most. The people who are online the most don't know their history the most. Isn't that crazy? Where all the information is, yet these people still argue over the things that they know nothing about. That's why I feel like that statistic is nonsensical.
His primary sources are a solitary poll he found to support his thesis and, more to the point, his own vibes as a guy who's read about America and also watched a lot of videos on it. Shanks, in a serious tone, reminds the largely white, largely middle-class group of educated Generation Z viewers he intended to address to not act like violent brown people.
The United States is not country X. It is supposedly the leader of the free world, and it plunging into the democratic doldrums of Colombia or Pakistan, where killing is as acceptable in the so-called democratic process as voting. That's globally significant.
Which is a choice, to say the least, especially considering Russia exists and has been carrying out domestic assassinations and international chemical attacks for decades. Shanks' video is almost shocking in its childish naivete and outright ignorance of American history. There is nothing remotely new about political violence in America, and if anything, the most you could say is that it's considerably tamer these days. He compares Kirk's assassination to that of President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, and makes the sort of speech only a middle-class, foreign, colonial Anglo can.
That's why I said, man, this guy, he's really on 10. This guy is really on 10. He really knows what he's talking about, man.
Really make, implying a sense of sober reflection and political unity followed Kennedy's death.
When John F. Kennedy was assassinated, leaders from across the aisle and newspapers, regardless of their affiliations and leanings, condemned the act and solemnly called for national unity. Not that this was needed, as the citizenry itself, by the far-off minuscule fringes, were already in mourning. There wasn't an air of partisanship about it, because they were civically minded enough to know that they weren't just mourning a national tragedy, they were mourning an attack on the presidency itself, an attack on an institution vital for the democratic process to function. No one had to tell them this. They knew it. They understood that Kennedy's assassination was bigger than politics. It was civics. That this wasn't just an attack on the player, but an attack on the game itself.
In the first place, the Negro's never been as docile as white Americans wanted to believe.
Are you upset with the fact
There has never been civics in America. So anybody who believes what he just said, there's never been civics in America. There's never been a line that's been too far to cross, because there was people who were enslaved and weren't considered human, and they were considered they were considered 3/5 of a man. So that means once you're able to cross those lines, there's a certain point where you realize that nobody in this society actually cares. And then you say, oh, we're turning away from this past. No, we never turned away from the past because we never really truly acknowledged it. Acknowledging it would be giving these people reparations and pushing them up to a higher status, to where they can truly claim that, oh, now we feel truly equal. But that was never done in America. And then you say, oh, well, time's passed now, so we should be good. They make more money now, right? We should be good. It has never been so.
Here we are. Watch. Well, I don't understand. What was happening to the left? Well, anything's taking all the time. You think it's important to arrest the people who are beating up newsmen this time? Well, some of them need the cleaning. Some of the newsmen need the cleaning, and the cameramen don't. Because they won't tell the truth. I don't think that's the way it is. Really having to beat up by people. No, it's not. No.
That was a myth. We were not singing and dancing down the levee. We were trying to keep alive. We were trying to survive a very brutal system.
Yeah, I do believe we'll be continuing to go to school here no matter what happens. Yes, without violence. That's right. Now, we don't have a little violence. We've always had it. That goes in any town, anything else. See? I wouldn't say we'll have no violence in there. Well, that'd be making a bigger statement. But some people say a little is too much. Well, I would say that.
The Negro has never been happy in this place. What those kids, first of all, prove. First of all, they prove that. They come from a long line of fighters.
Kennedy's death preceded a surge in Ku Klux Klan membership growth and one of the most violent periods for black Americans and anybody remotely seen as supporting them in U.S. history. Focusing on just a few instances of the literal thousands of murders, assassinations, lynchings, and uncountable instances of daily violence, we have the 1964 disappearance and murder of Andrew Goodman, James Earl Cheney, and Michael Henry Schreiner by Klansmen in and around the town of Philadelphia, Mississippi.
William Simmons is secretary of the Jackson Citizens Council, editor of its newspaper, and president of its forum, which produced radio and television programs attacking the advance of immigration.
The South has a large Negro population. In our state, it's about 42% of the total. And anyone with two eyes in his head and with roughly normal vision can look around him and see that there's a vast and permanent difference.
Y'all think he has normal vision? His eyes look a little slanted. I feel like maybe the way that his eyelids sit on his eyes will prevent him from having a normal vision. But
between the white and colored people.
The subsequent investigation was immortalized in the 1988 film Mississippi Burning.
Well, the question we all ask ourselves while watching Mississippi Burning is, where were we in 1964?
this is so crazy to me. He said that. Wait, that's funny. He said they have a 42% of the nigger population, and then he said that. Then he said, "Oh, the colored people." Why did he change his tone? Why did he just keep saying?
I'll ask you the same thing. Well, I'm embarrassed to say that I was in New York, working on my own projects, trying to make a living as an actor, and not really involved in civil rights. And I think I was probably like a lot of Americans, that was something that was happening in Mississippi, and I was uninvolved with that, and it was really an arm's length deal.
Civil rights figures were assassinated throughout the 1960s, including Malcolm X, 1965.
Who do you feel is responsible for the death of Malcolm X?
As I restated, and I'll restate again, that the white racist power structure in this country engineered the death of Malcolm X. As they engineered the death of Lumumba, Dag Hammarskjöld, John F. Kennedy, and threatened the life of Nkrumah Mandela, the same forces.
Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., 1968.
Dr. Martin Luther King, the apostle of nonviolence in the civil rights movement, has been shot to death in Memphis, Tennessee. Police have issued an all-points bulletin for a well-dressed young white man seen running from the scene. Officers also reportedly chased and fired on a radio-equipped car containing two white men. Dr. King was standing on the balcony of a second-floor hotel room tonight when, according to a companion, a shot was fired from across the street. In a friend's words, the bullet exploded in his face.
Edwin Pratt, 1969. Alongside an untold number of Americans killed through intentional misuse of state power, such as in the Orangeburg massacre of student protesters, 1968.
Many of the students were angered at news reports that sniper fire had come from the campus long before the highway patrolman opened up with a salvo of shotgun blasts. This was positively confirmed today by state law enforcement officials who found themselves flat against the ground as bullets whined close to their ears last night. An official who witnessed the battle, but would not be quoted by name, said that when the highway patrolman was felled by a blow to the face, it was presumed that he had been shot. He said warning shots were not fired at that time because it was long beyond the warning stage.
When this all broke out, did you ever feel that your actions in keeping Negroes from your bowling alley here in Orangeburg would catapult you and Orangeburg into national limelight? No, sir. Have you any plans to close your bowling alley as has been demanded by students at South Carolina State and Claflin? No, sir. Have you any plans to admit Negroes as requested by students at these institutions? I will continue to operate my business as I have in the past, under the same way that I have, and I do not contemplate on changing.
Demonstrations and violence have never solved any problem yet and won't solve this one. If there's a matter of going in and using certain facilities and there's a question involved, the courts are available. The courts have been used before.
I don't think this will solve the problem for the credit dockets throughout the state of South Carolina. I think it's unfair to give these larger county extra circuit judges when the other circuits do not have the benefit of other judges. And of course, it's all being paid for by the taxpayers of the state of South Carolina. I don't think it's treating the smaller counties and smaller circuits fair, which have a lot of them have quite a bit of litigation in also.
The reason for this violence, if you are not American, was what's called the American Civil Rights Movement, which at the time was largely focused on ending de facto and de jure segregation and discrimination against non-WASP Americans. De jure meaning it was literally the law, and de facto meaning it wasn't the written law but was common practice.
It should make us go out with more determination. It should cause us to go out more determined than ever before to achieve our rights. So let us get rid of fear. Fear of going to jail. Fear of going down to register. Fear of losing a job. If we get rid of that, nobody can stop it.
Starting, for brevity, with the Brown v. Board of Education decision of 1954, we have school segregation in simplest terms being declared unconstitutional, and the following Civil Rights Act of 1957, a Voting Protection Act considered by the people at the time too watered down after mass interference with the bill by highly racist Dixie Democrats. This led to the Civil Rights Act of 1960, establishing federal inspection of local voter registration polls and introducing penalties for voter obstruction or interference, a major issue at the time for non-white Americans. Kennedy was assassinated before the passing of the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which is the one people call the Civil Rights Act in America, which outlawed discrimination based on race, color, religion, sex, and national origin. In that same year, the 24th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution was ratified, prohibiting the payment of poll taxes to vote in federal elections, which primarily affected just the 5 remaining states who maintained a poll tax for federal elections: Alabama, Arkansas, Mississippi, Texas, and Virginia. In the following year, the Voting Rights Act of 1965, prohibiting racial discrimination in voting, was signed into law by President Lyndon B. Johnson.
Today is a triumph for freedom, as huge as any victory that's ever been won on any battlefield. Yet to seize the meaning of this day, we must recall darker times. 3.5 centuries ago, the first Negroes arrived at Jamestown. They did not arrive in brave ships in search of a home for freedom. They did not mingle fear and joy in expectation that in this new world anything would be possible to a man strong enough to reach for it. They came in darkness and they came in chains. And today, we strike away the last major shackle of those fierce and ancient bonds.
The Voting Rights Act is, essentially, the piece of legislation people are imagining whenever they suggest America stop being racist at some point. And it was massive in both scope and controversy.
As expected, the most angry opposition to the bill came from Dixie lawmakers, like Senator Strom Thurmond of South Carolina.
This so-called civil rights proposals, which the President has sent to Capitol Hill for enactment into law, are unconstitutional, unnecessary, unwise, and extend beyond the realm of reason. This is the worst civil rights package ever presented to the Congress, and is reminiscent of the Reconstruction proposals and actions of the radical Republican Congress.
Legendary racist and long-serving South Carolina Senator Strom Thurmond, who set the record for the longest single-person Senate filibuster when he spoke against passing the 1957 Civil Rights Act for 24 hours and 18 minutes, eventually voted against the Voting Rights Act, and switched from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party ahead of the 1964 presidential election over frustrations with the party's ineffective leadership, kicking off the party switch that created the modern Republican Party.
Recent statements of Senator Barry Goldwater and in some cases Richard Nixon. Do you think there is a real danger of the Republican Party becoming the white man's party in this country?
I think this is a real danger, and I've talked with some Negro Republicans who are very concerned about this. I see trends and developments which will reveal that unless the liberals of the Republican Party play a much more decisive role in leadership positions, this will become a white man's party. And I think this would be tragic for the Republican Party as well as tragic for the nation.
The last major Civil Rights Act of the 1960s was the Civil Rights Act of 1968, commonly known as the Fair Housing Act, prohibiting discrimination based on race, religion, or national origin when selling, renting, or financing housing, amongst other provisions. This was signed into law during the riots following Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, Tennessee. Shanks suggested in his video that the American president in 1963 was somehow a symbol of democracy, but he absolutely wasn't, and that was sort of the point. In 1963, the constitutional amendments securing the right to vote were largely unenforced, those being 14th, 15th, and 19th, and the newly passed 24th Amendments. It took decades of intervention by federal authorities and further expansion of the various civil rights laws passed in that era to achieve just enough equity in America for future President Barack Obama to be called a Kenyan Muslim by future President Donald Trump. And America was rife with political violence of all stripes in those interim years as well. President Ronald Reagan was shot by John Hinckley in 1981. From 1978 to 1995, eco-terrorist and serial murderer Ted Kaczynski would mail bombs to prominent businessmen, scientists, and others as an act of political defiance against the Industrial Revolution and its consequences. And again in 1995, Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols would plan and execute the Oklahoma City bombing, the largest domestic terror attack on U.S. soil to this day. San Francisco Board of Supervisors member and gay rights activist Harvey Milk would be assassinated in his office in 1978, just 3 years before the start of the AIDS epidemic, and its intentional exacerbation by the Reagan administration in an act of genocide against homosexuals both in America and abroad.
We are talking about a broad groundswell of white power activity, militant right activity. The Proud Boys have to be considered alongside other public-facing groups like the Oath Keepers and Two Percenters and similar groups like this, other January 6th groups, and also alongside the violent underground of this movement, which includes groups like Atomwaffen and the Base, may or may not eventually turn out to include other sorts of underground activity and other sorts of attack, and certainly includes the quote-unquote lone wolf shootings in Jacksonville and Buffalo and Charleston and Christchurch and El Paso and Pittsburgh. We can go on and on and on. This is all part of the same movement.
The vast majority of political assassinations and acts of terrorism against private citizens in America are carried out by white conservatives upset about some immediate political grievance. And it's always been that way, since the very founding of America on the dual tenets of enslavement of Africans and genocide of Native Americans. This idea of a calmer, better America, an America focused on democracy and fair dealing and free speech, is in the kindest terms a dream, and in the most accurate terms, a hallucination.
So what happened here in Minnesota in the early morning darkness of June 14th with the political assassinations of Melissa and Mark, and what happened to myself, my wife Yvette, and my daughter Hope was pure.
It's something I think about a lot. It's like when we talk about like movements and like radical movements or radical violent movements, it has only been done by white people. The only time black people have done anything remotely violent was BLM. And so I think every time people bring up BLM and say, man, you see what they did? during BLM. We never want to go back to that time when black people are so radical. But the only reason that they were being radical is because they've been dying unjustly for years upon years upon years. BLM was not just because of George Floyd. BLM was because of the mass amount of black people getting killed by cops. Trayvon Martin, um, there's a couple more that I couldn't forgot, but there was a there was a lot of black people getting murdered by cops. So BLM happened. And George Floyd was like the last one that kind of stuck the nail in the coffin. But when black people get murdered, they come together and do a riot. When white people when they get murdered, they they say that they're gonna go kill black people and they're gonna go fight against the other side when white people are usually killing white people. Black people don't majority kill white people. It's usually white people who kill white people. They don't say, "Oh guys, we gotta reform the people in our race." There's just so many white people who are just not morally or mentally right. But instead they say, "Oh, we're gonna go take it to that smaller group of races because they're doing something against our race." But for black people, it's always the black people who wanna condemn the black people. White people, they'll shade you slightly and they'll put it in covert terms until you force them, then they'll just start saying the racistness. But for black people, they love to condemn each other. Or for white people, they say, guys, let's get together and go kill some black people. Let's go ahead and go kill ourselves. I mean, when we talk about violence, right? Political violence has always been a thing, but it has been majority white people who have been politically violent. And that's something I think about a lot. And it's like they're like, oh, the left is so violent, but it's not really the left. Really, the majority people on the right of the white man's party, the radical groups that join the right, they're still violent. They didn't just join the Republicans and then stop being violent. It's just that they don't put their group's name first. They just say, "Oh, it was a radical Republican." They don't say that, "Oh, it was a Proud Boy," or say, "Oh, it was a former Ku Klux Klan member or a descendant of a Ku Klux Klan member." They just say, "Oh, it was a radical right person." But on the left, they don't have those same radical groups inside the party. But the thing about the left, though, is that they would enjoy being on the right as long as they're winning. So they don't need a radical group. They just need some crazy people who will push them out the party and force them to go to the right. And that's enough for them.
It was a political attack on public servants and public service. And it was aimed squarely and slowly at our party. And it was a wake-up call. What is happening at a national level, the persistent dehumanizing narratives and conspiracy theories in public discourse are fueling the radicalization of individuals willing to engage in political violence against perceived opponents. Okay. I'm still slowly recovering from my gunshot wounds. 9 of them. If you want to see the pattern on my body, it's the same pattern that's in my red door that I no longer have. Although I do still have a long way to go.
Suggesting the 1960s, when America was in the heart of the Cold War, when J. Edgar Hoover's Federal Bureau of Investigation had paused its mass interference into the lives of suspected communists of the McCarthyism era to pursue mass surveillance and intimidation campaigns against black people literally fighting for their right to vote, isn't just an absurdity, it's a white supremacist dog whistle. Make America great again. I'm sure you're familiar. The idea of a better America that existed before division and violence in some ill-defined past is encapsulated in the phrase, make America great again. And it's what Charlie Kirk actively pushed for both as the founder of Turning Point USA and as a personal friend and confidant of the Trump family.
I talk to him sometimes and say, this guy is like a young guy. He was really a wise man. From the time Charlie worked on my presidential campaign in 2016, he was there right from the beginning. He liked me. I don't know. I have no idea why. What the hell was he thinking? He said, you're going to win, sir. I said, I'm ready.
He liked you because you were white. Right? He liked you because you were white and you made money. And and you couldn't be considered racist to black people. You had good PR, and you were white. So I mean, why would he not like you? And you had a lot of money.
He has 17 senators and a lot of tough people and governors. We have all these people, and he said, "No, you're going to win, sir." He said, "Not going to be close." And he made it happen. He helped make it happen. I'll tell you that. And he's going to make it happen. I said, "I'm not sure I can make it."
Sorry. I hear a lot of black people say, "Oh, stop blaming white people. You need to stop talking about white people." The only reason that I'm bringing up white people is to make black people understand that the white people stand in solidarity while we do not. They have more people than us, so it's easier for them to group up. It's just easier. Maybe not all of them are grouped up, but there's a good sizable amount who are grouped up, unlike us when we're not grouped up at all. And our groups are tiny, if any at all. So it's like they say, "Oh, you're blaming white people." You say white people, white people, white people. No, it's really just to show you how much they can do together as a group when we're not doing anything as a group. So really, I'm admiring them because if we had the goal, we could do a lot more damage.
But he's going to make it. He's there. He's looking down on us right now. It's so incredible. Look at this. How this turned out. This was supposed to be so dark and cloudy. Not dark and cloudy, is it? Look at that, how beautiful that is.
The way you make America great again to these people is by repealing the Civil Rights Acts to before the Voting Rights Act of 1964 and the 1964 Civil Rights Act, and begin returning black Americans to second-class citizens. Charlie Kirk's messaging, his entire platform and existence really, was based around the elimination of rights for anybody who's not wealthy, Protestant, white, and male. And as an actual American, it gives me a warm and fuzzy to know that every time I talk about him until the day I die, it will be in the past tense. Jordan Shanks and other white fair-weather liberals like Dean Withers have expressed a distaste for violence I find alien to my core. Once upon a time in America, coal miners lived in such miserable conditions they were essentially indistinguishable from slavery. Common slavery, not the advanced.
I don't get a warm fuzzy because I don't really care about people dying in such a manner. But I mean, maybe because he cares a lot about this sort of thing, that would make him feel that way.
Form of chattel slavery practiced by the American founding fathers and eventually cribbed by Adolf Hitler as a method of staffing his work camps. American coal miners, victimized too long by the parasite capitalist coal bosses, eventually took up arms to defend themselves against the corporate mercenary armies and even National Guard forces sent to break up their striking unions. The Coal Wars would see union and unionizing coal workers across America shooting and killing scabs, coal bosses, and strikebreakers in the endless fight to get their fair share of their labor. Dead strikebreakers, dead union bosses, dead scabs, and the folks who had the courage to put them in the ground are the reason we have workers' rights in America today. Shanks, Withers, Klein, and other white liberals who tried to turn Kirk's death into a moment of reflection or a call to calm down the rhetoric all come off as far more fixated on their own health and safety as prominent exploiters of political causes than they do earnest political actors.
If I wanted to be a grifter and save stuff for attention and money, I would have taken the path of least resistance. I wouldn't have lost my family. I would have been socially ostracized. I would have grifted on the right 110%.
Right. You wouldn't be on social media. You wouldn't make money. The path of least resistance to the right is so.
Shanks specifically calls Kirk a martyr and suggests his influence has never been bigger.
Blame anything you like on the demise of the US in recent decades. Every boogeyman is probably going to have some level of validity to it. But that mindset right there, Charlie had it coming. That's going to be the nail in the coffin. It won't have the effect that they think it'll have either, as has already happened. He's become far more influential than he ever was alive. He's been elevated from commentator to martyr. What did you think was going to happen? Is that mission accomplished, is it, Tyler?
I will say Charlie Kirk did not achieve what he wanted to, because now after he's gone, all the people on the right are way more radical than him. So he still believes the same thing as them, but the things they say is more radical than what he would say. So now that he's gone, all the slip ups that he made are the ones that show the most, because that's what people look at when you die. They search your entire life and they find the mistakes you made. And now that he's gone, he can't defend himself. When you're alive, you can transform into something else. You can keep going, keep putting out new things, keep showing people new sides, and people won't look at that little mistake. But when you're dead, the content's gone. You know, all that's left is what you did and what you stood for. Maybe if he lived 30 more years, he could say, "Man, that wasn't really me. You know, I really was just trying to do something great. I was really just trying to become the president one day." But I mean, now we know what you stand for was being a white nationalist and that you didn't like black people. And nobody should say his best friend is Candace Owens because because clearly he didn't care about her either, bro. That's why he kicked her out of Turning Point USA and was like, "Hey, we can only hang out, not on camera. We can only hang out when nobody's around, Candace, because If somebody's around, they might think I like black people.
Mentioning that Kirk is a martyr for the repeal of the Civil Rights Act, and the only influence he has is on racists. Even Kirk's firearm proliferation rhetoric is simply a method of reframing gun violence from a conversation on proliferation and access to a screed against urban crime statistics, as evidenced by his literal last words on Earth. The thought, as well, that Kirk's legacy poses a greater risk in death than it did in life is laughable at best. It is, first off, plainly assumptive, especially if your connection to America is via Twitter and YouTube, and friends you've made through Twitter and YouTube. In my life, I've seen the Republican pundit of the moment come and go for decades now, with Rush Limbaugh, Bill O'Reilly, Tucker Carlson, and even new names like Ben Shapiro and Stephen Crowder be replaced the second they're no longer at the heart of the zeitgeist. Kirk's value to right-wingers was first in being young and conservative, and then when that ended, in being a good middle road voice for blending white supremacy with moderate conservatism through dog whistling and massaged statistics. Now that he's dead, he can't do that. And nothing about his life or messaging or contributions is so unique, in my mind, that it'll have any more staying power than his own mortal flesh. Literally being alive in this moment to act as that bridge between old school racism and new school tactics was the only valuable thing about the man. No, these soft-bellied white people are just afraid of having to die for what they say they believe in, and they are so fucking scared of it they're downplaying what amounts to possibly being one of the most effective acts of political violence in American history.
Tyler has a point. I know this is no concession. In fact, it might even come off as gloating, and perhaps it is. But I was the target of a failed assassination attempt. What always made me feel like Australia is a good place is the fact that even my political enemies, and I can assure you I have many, they came out and publicly declared, even if it was for internet clout, that it was unacceptable. Regardless of how self-serving and click-hungry the performance was, the performance still had to be performed to an audience that believed that political violence cannot ever be justified. It cannot be rationalised. Yes, we have violent political outbursts every now and then. Every country does. But it will find no safe harbour here. It is a line in the sand that the general public will not cross.
Regardless of what is ever finally confirmed about the shooter and his motivations, the assassination of Charlie Kirk has shattered the class barrier between political speech and political violence, of which he and his ilk have long availed themselves. Kirk made his money, like Shapiro or Crowder or The Quartering, or Asmongold or Candace Owens or Tim Pool or Nick Fuentes, by saying egregious, untrue, and outrageous things, without fear of reprisal or punishment.
So, it's funny, I used to say that, hey, if you as a gay person would go to Gaza, they'd throw you off the tall buildings, right? Now they don't have any tall buildings left, so when you mess with the bull, you get the horns. Is that too soon? I'm sorry, maybe you should kill two, stupid Muslims.
Being provocative while also being insulated from the potential violence of that provocation by relying on state power.
That's why I feel bad for people who try to get closer to the whiteness, because it's like, bro, you see how they're gonna treat you as soon as you're in a different position, right? Jew or Muslims are on a rise. Ever since 9/11, 9/11 they were down, but they had been trying to rise back up, get back in the power structure, just like every other race tries to get back in the power structure. And then October 7th happens, and then everybody's like, whoa. Everybody's like, whoa, we don't like Muslims once again. Look, they were trying to kill Jews. Guys, look, we hate the Muslims, man. The dirty brown people. Before they weren't calling them dirty brown people, but now they're calling them brown so they can get them closer to black. And it's like, there's nothing wrong with that, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like, this is what the world, this is the game that the world plays. So if you're not a part of the game, you're just getting pushed aside and laughed at because you're not in the game.
Protect themselves, playing up this fictitious and extremely online idea of free speech, in which you can say whatever you want and must never face any consequences for doing so. That's never been the case for American free speech, however. People who fall outside the establishment's protection, who aren't fail-safe against reprisal by state power or powerful donors or massive crowds of supporters on and offline, or even by the simple situational convenience of self-employment, have never been able to express themselves to the same extent as these pundits. Right-wingers are currently availing themselves of this fact by getting people who say they're happy about Charlie Kirk dying, a reasonable and First Amendment protected opinion, put on little blacklists like Jews in the Holocaust. Funnily enough, that's how Kirk actually got his start, by being an anti-free speech warrior, creating the same list of subversives, teachers, and politicians you'd see being held up to Adolf Eichmann at his trial in Nuremberg.
Many always like to exaggerate the measures used against them in order simply to awaken quickly, and with the hope that they will be discontinued. Ever since we have begun to intensify our measures against the worst enemy, he has been trying by means of anonymous letters to practically all citizens of the right to escape the fate he deserves.
With Kirk's assassination, the singular and class-centric freedom of being a provocateur safe from one's provocations, of speaking and having others pay the price of your speech, of insulation from reprisal, has vanished overnight. The cost for being a public Nazi, for being an advocate for white supremacy, is rising. Even if the shooter isn't politically aligned with these ideals, the reaction to Kirk's death is really all that mattered. The small and fervent celebrations, the bright eyes and raised defiant chins, the deafening collective sigh of relief, the whispers in every corner of this country, every part of the internet. Who cares? Who's next? These are the elements which have slipped from Pandora's box, and at risk of overextending the metaphor, all that remains after the panicked and fearful shutting is hope.
Today we received here at National Headquarters of the American Nazi Party the immortal remains of Commander George Lincoln Rockwell.
I think this is so crazy. People don't even understand this. There was American Nationalist Nazi Party that, and people say, "Oh, how do white people benefit from the structure?" There's a group that was considered Nazis that was allowed to be a party. Why are they allowed to be a party? Because being a Nazi is not that much of a problem as long as they're going against black people. Only time this would be a problem is if there were Jews fighting against it. That's when it would be a problem. That's what it's like, bro, you gotta understand history. They hate us. They don't care about us. It only looks bad when the Jews talk about it. It only looks bad when the Jews talk about it. That's the only time they're gonna stop it, which is okay, right? At least the Jews protect their people. At least the Jews protect their people. That's one thing I can respect about them. They really go to bat for their own. And that's why I just feel so bad for black people, because it's like, why can't we protect our own? These are the people y'all are trying to be like. That's why I can't be cool with no coons. I'm not gonna lie to me. If you got a white girlfriend, we cannot be associated, unfortunately. Even though you're black, and I do think you're probably cool, but we cannot be associated, big bro. Unfortunately, you just don't get it.
Frank's most egregiously errors, in my opinion, is his failure to make the more apt comparison of Charlie Kirk and his assassination, not to President Kennedy, but to that of George Lincoln Rockwell, whom Kirk in spirit and practice modeled his life after.
If I were religious, I would say Hitler was the second coming of Christ. I think Hitler was a gift from Providence. I think he was so far above anything that I'll be able to accomplish that it's just almost sacrilegious for me to speak of myself in the same terms with Hitler.
But this is your objective, to model yourself as closely as
No,
possible.
my objective is to carry out what Hitler started, not to model my own person on Hitler, because this is impossible.
You consider yourself the second Führer?
No, I don't even use the word Führer. I'm not a German. I'm American, as you're a Canadian. I consider myself, in terms of Bolshevism, I would be the Lenin to Marx. And in terms of Christianity, I'm the St. Paul to Hitler's Christ. In other words, I am the spreader, the world spreader of a doctrine which Hitler originated, and it was crucified, dead and buried, and it is now rising.
Rockwell, a United States naval veteran of the Second World War and the Korean War, founded the American Nazi Party in 1959, 2 years after the passing of the first Civil Rights Act. Though Rockwell and his legacy aren't often discussed in the modern era, the man himself is the template for modern crypto-fascists like Nick Fuentes and Charlie Kirk. Rockwell would dress in a tailored Nazi uniform and counter-protest civil rights marchers, purposely agitating people in order to get a reaction and drum up attention for his cause.
Well, you have come before hearings, other meetings, dressed in uniform. Why are you not dressed in uniform today?
I have never come before any hearing dressed in uniform. I use the uniform to agitate. When Martin Luther King is out in the streets agitating, why I agitate back. And the uniform is very good for agitating. For appearing before a hearing, it's a mental battle of wits, not a battle of agitation.
Like Kirk, he would defer criticism of his racist beliefs by hiring token minorities.
People think I'm anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic. This is a lot of baloney in my speech. I should bring out that this is simply not true. One of my top men in California, until they put him in jail recently, is Leonard Holstein, a Jew. And I think he's one of the finest young men I ever met.
Would a white supremacist organization host a black leadership summit?
Yes.
Certainly, I spoke before 11,000 Negroes in Chicago with the black Muslims, and the reaction was very, very favorable. Yes, the black nationalists in Harlem. There's a lot of Negroes that agree with me.
You can be.
Would a white supremacist organization have a black female communications director?
Yes, there are ideological shields. Yes, there are ideological shields that further your talking points, and we're every much as committed to bigotry and white supremacy.
Would a white supremacist organization host the nation's largest young Latino leadership summit for 5 years straight?
Yes.
Well, I hope that when I finish speaking, they will realize that I'm not a bigot. I'm a man who believes in telling the truth. I think in the hearts of most Americans, there are a lot of things they don't dare say because they're hypocrites, and fear has settled like a pall all over our country. I don't think I'm a bigot. I'm simply a man who is telling facts that everybody else is afraid to tell.
And hide the worst aspects of his beliefs.
I'm not gonna lie. That girl, she definitely clocked him. She definitely clocked him, and nobody was able to see it at that time. He was completely correct. Ideological shields. That's why I told you, Candace Owens, he had you around so he could say, hey, look, my best friend's black. We went fishing together. But it's okay, Erica. She'll never be like you. She'll never be like you, my baby. Nah, no, I'm tripping. But that is the case, though. That is the case.
He's behind doublespeak and cheap appeals to nationalism, when, in reality, his largest focus was creating a white Christian America through expulsion and diminution of non-whites, Jews, and the conversion or genocide of homosexuals.
Well, Martin Luther King is a good example, I would say. I will say this. If I had the funds to do it, and I could ship 5,000 Negroes, let us call them, up to your city tomorrow morning, you'd have a Negro problem. It wouldn't be long before you'd be saying, what are we going to do about this thing?
You saying them up in cattle cars or Greyhound buses?
Well, I think the Negroes would be more comfortable, most of them in cattle cars.
Yes, but I just wondered which way you'd rather see them go.
Well, I think the Negroes themselves would prefer to go the way they live. I think they'd like to get a couple wine bottles and heroin and a numbers game and get the cattle car. They all crawl all over each other.
How do you feel about the allegations that the American Nazi Party has strong homosexual tendencies?
I will say this. In my organization, I have men who were homosexuals. They were sucked into that filth, just like drunkards or dope fiends. And I have been able to rescue them. And I'm not a bit ashamed of that. I'll stand shoulder to shoulder with anyone on any day. The only thing I will not tolerate is a homosexual who is a homosexual.
This is one of your enemies?
That's one of the biggest enemies. I'd rather gas queers than anybody else.
Rockwell was shot to death by John Patler, an expelled member of the American Nazi Party in 1967, but his method of Americanizing and normalizing Nazism remains a mainstay in conservative politics both here and abroad. The Q movement, MAGA, America First, and other similar organizations are all generational offspring of Rockwell's ideals and his methods, if not those of his immediate subordinates and associates. One of Rockwell's best-known subordinates in the American Nazi Party, William Luther Pierce, would go on to pen the Turner Diaries, essentially the Bible of American white supremacy.
We're like a big family, a tribe. This is William Pierce, author of the Turner Diaries. Solidarity. A man many see as the intellect behind the racist movement.
That's why they have promoted every sort of diversity, as they call it. Homosexuals, non-white racial minorities, feminists, their fellow Jews, of course. Everybody except normal, healthy, decent white men and women.
The Turner Diaries contains the DNA of the modern conservative movement, especially MAGA, with its focus on a violent clandestine resistance to the great replacement of white Christians by Bolshevik or atheist Jews.
As you have said, we are not out to liquidate the Jews. We are out to liquidate communist traitors. Unfortunately, too many Jewish atheists, not religious Jews, but too many religious atheist Jews are mixed up in communism. That's our only concern with the Jews.
What some might call postmodern neo-Marxism, for instance. Pierce's novel, distributed through gun shows and Soldier of Fortune magazine as a pro-Second Amendment text, would go on to inspire Timothy McVeigh's April 19th, 19...
As you can see, even the Nazi party is still afraid of the Jews. He said, hey, we're not. Hey, guys, we're just trying to help y'all clean up the filth, man. We're just going for the atheist Jews, not the normal Jews. We have no problems with them. And like I said, that's why I respect the Jews, because nobody can talk down on their name. It's not gonna be an easy fight. That's why I can only respect their way of life.
1995 bombing of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City, killing 169 people and injuring a further 685.
Around 9:35. It was very early on, as I said, the fires were still burning, and I remember part of the site assessment was just to get a sense of what had gone on, and you could still see people trapped in the upper floors of the building, and of course the firefighters were putting the fires out, and paramedics and ambulances. There were a lot of wounded people, walking wounded.
15 yesterday morning, our bomb went off.
These are words from the book, The Turner Diaries.
Most of the victims of our bomb were only pawns, but there is no way we can destroy the system without hurting many thousands of innocent people.
They're only words, but some believe they are words that can kill.
I think there's little doubt that McVeigh was simply copycatting the fictional bombing in the Turner Diaries, almost to the letter.
According to court testimony, excerpts from the book were found in a sealed envelope in McVeigh's car after his arrest. Inside McVeigh's car, law enforcement agents later found a large sealed envelope, said Special Assistant U.S. Attorney Joseph Parker, lead prosecutor in the United States v. McVeigh, in his opening statements. It contains writings and magazines from, photocopies from magazines and from newspapers. The book is entitled The Turner Diaries. It's a fictional account of an attack on the federal government, which was carried out with a truck bomb, blowing up a federal building and killing hundreds of people. In a clipping that McVeigh had with him on his day of the bombing, talks about the value of killing innocent people for a cause. It reads, and he highlighted this, the real value of our attacks today lies in the psychological impact, not in the immediate casualties. For all that one might say against political violence, there exists, in contrast, a direct line of inspiration between George Rockwell, the first American neo-Nazi, and those people who died at the hands of Timothy McVeigh.
Villainous, traitorous, cowardly.
Pierce joined the ranks of extremists when he met George Lincoln Rockwell, head of the American Nazi Party in 1966. Pierce left behind a career as a physics professor and joined Rockwell's movement.
The Hitler was in a position much like the police in Los Angeles when the niggers rioted to the point where there was no more possibility of civil order.
After Rockwell's assassination by a former Nazi sympathizer, Pierce started the National Alliance, the home for his mail-order empire. Pierce says the Turner Diaries alone has sold more than 185,000 copies. Also hanged from lampposts and trees are politicians, reporters, teachers, judges, anyone who rejects Pierce's ideas of racial purity.
Probably the most important idea expressed in the Turner Diaries is that each of us has a responsibility for what's happening in the world around him, that each person has to stop being a spectator and start being a participant.
Many words were levied to George Rockwell in his short near decade as the head of the American Nazi Party, and not one of them shook his resolve to preach hate.
We don't mean to start an insurrection. That's what the niggers do. We're not a bunch of wild, radical, rebellious people. We want to defend our government, not destroy it. We want to preserve liberty, not destroy it. And the only way you can do it when somebody comes at you with a gun is to have your own squirrel rifle. That's what I believe in. That's there.
Not a single word mitigated the inspiration felt toward Rockwell by William Luther Pierce.
This is a world directory of the radical right published in Great Britain. It has an entry.
I think it's so interesting. They project their reality onto us, and they'll say, oh man, we're not the ones who want an insurrection. Those are the black people. The only time black people fight back is when it's their last opportunity or last option. They have to fight back. And he's like, we're here to protect our government. That's why y'all commit most actual political violence. Like, when we do it, it's called a revolution because we know how to do it the right way. But the problem with the black people is just that they don't have any good leaders who are gonna push them forward to do it the right way. It's okay, we'll fix it.
In here on the National Alliance and on me. And it says, Pierce is one of the senior figures of the American ultra-right.
And following, not a single word mitigated or quelled or ceased or slowed the inevitable violence that would come from Pierce's words in turn.
We met him at the maximum security U.S. penitentiary in Terre Haute, Indiana, where he now sits on death row awaiting a date for his execution. Because of his appeal, one of the conditions his lawyer laid down was that we not ask him directly, are you the Oklahoma City bomber?
Maybe one of the benefits of me talking to you today is that you'll see that maybe not everything is true that you've heard about me.
For example, what's not true?
Well, am I pure evil? Am I the face of terror sitting here in front of you? Or am I able to talk to you man to man?
It was a bullet that shut up George Rockwell for good. And it's only a curiosity of history what might have been avoided if that bullet had found him or Pierce or any of their German predecessors sooner. In his video decrying the state of a country he neither lives in nor understands, Jordan Shanks attempts to empathize for a moment with the way Americans might feel regarding school shootings.
Due to the inundation of American politics that the world consumes with relish, I think I have a taste of what the average American feels when there's yet another school shooting. You're not shocked that it happened. You're shocked that you're no longer shocked.
My honest reply is I feel nothing. Not regret, not sadness, not anger, nothing. I can't permit myself to feel these things or I'll lose my mind. To be an American in 2025 is to be trapped between the common responsibilities of any man or woman on earth working, caring for your family, planning out the fleeting moments of your life, and the existential disgust of sharing the beauty of this world with racist, capital-hogging parasites who laugh in the faces of dead children, who tell women they should carry the offspring of their rapists, who put on...
I think him saying that there's only a small minority of people who feel like that. I think most of the things you said, right? Carrying all those responsibilities, seeing what's happening in the politics in America, and having to carry on with your life is absolutely true. They're just trying to get by, but getting mad about people being morally incorrect, not at all, because people have been doing it for so long. What's the point in having discuss? Feel nothing. I'd rather ignore it until it bites me, in the face. That's why they say somebody's got to change it.
Little uniform parades commemorating the murder and enslavement of blacks and Jews. I suppose in other quaint little backwater countries like the United Kingdom and Australia, you take some perverse pride in hearing the Nazis out.
So please welcome you introducing Charlie Cuck.
Sure, very easily. We stand, first of all, for the preservation of the white race, because we believe everything else depends on the white race. It's what created everything else that we hold dear. And secondly, we would want to preserve the Western Christian civilization and the American constitutional republic, which it produced.
That whether you realize it or not, whether you're secular, atheist, Buddhist, Hindu, or Christian, if you live in the West, you are an inheritor of a Christian tradition. The way we look at things, honor your neighbor, help the poor, charity, natural rights, these are somewhat weird ideas when you actually think about it. And instead of us trying to make a manufactured counterfeit new morality, we should go back to our Christian roots.
What did you think of the speech?
I thought it was very educational and very enlightening.
In what respects?
In what respects? Well, I've heard a little bit on television and read a little bit in the newspapers about what he's done and what he said, and I found that he's not a rabble-rouser. Well, he doesn't have to be. And if one looks for it, one can find many, many logical flaws in his statements, and he's quite a hypocrite when you come down to it.
McVeigh may have even tried to talk with the author of the book. Have you ever talked to Timothy McVeigh by phone?
Never. I've never spoken with Timothy McVeigh by telephone or in person or any other way.
Although Pierce denies it, two separate law enforcement sources told CNN McVeigh's telephone records show he placed a call to Pierce's unlisted phone number in West Virginia in the weeks before the bombing. It was a lengthy call. The content is unknown.
You let the boss impugn the worker, the Nazi impugn the Jew, the white impugn the black, the man impugn the woman, and you think a few paltry laws are enough to keep the worst of them in line. And maybe you're right. I don't know and I don't care. Because you're not here. And I am.
Give us the ballot, and we will transform the salient misdeeds of bloodthirsty mobs into the calculated good deeds of orderly citizens.
We're going to be here for a couple hours.
I think what Martin Luther King said there is very much true, and also our downfall. He said the turn the bad deeds into calculated decisions made by our fellow countrymen, basically. But it's like, because we did that, now they say, well, look, all we did for you. Look how much time has passed. Why aren't y'all doing the same thing as us now? Because we turned their terrible deeds into calculated moves that they had to do to achieve equality for everyone, which it never was achieved. So I mean, it was a double-edged sword for sure. And they obviously, a lot of people felt like, oh man, this was definitely right. I mean, if we achieved what we wanted to, then he would have been completely right. But him just getting equality should not have been the end point, but obviously he was assassinated shortly after. So it makes sense that that was all that was done. That video was a treat, right? Treat for me, treat for you, right? Now that our souls have arisen once again, to all those who keep the faith up, right? Now you can feel blessed to be alive once again, to be living in this day. But it's okay. We'll work together for a better future so we can keep having faith in rising. Thank you.